Hey guys, and welcome back to another lesson. Today we're going to take a look at this little fusion piece you heard me play at the beginning. It's just a little piece I arranged and recorded for the purpose of this lesson. And I'm going to take you through it and break down the different parts so I can show you a few of the tricks that I used to render it. And I hope you actually take something from this. Just by, the best way to learn something is really to copy someone. So I hope you end up copying some of the stuff I show you and incorporate it into your own playing. So let's get started. Let's look at the first part of the piece, which goes like this. Now, before I even begin, I'd like to point out that I was actually playing not just the piano sound, but a layered piano sound of the piece. This is quite common for getting like this. It's a very distinctive kind of fusion jazz sound. And the way you do it is you take a piano sound and you add a pad to it. So I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a pad in the background. See, it's playing while I'm holding down the key. And you usually also add an electric piano. And the electric pianos people tend to use are these sort of modern, sort of FM-based pianos like this. So once you layer them all, you get something like... And that really fills up the sound. So that's something you should start doing if you want to get this very distinctive fusion sound. Now let's go back to the piece itself. And basically what I was playing was a C to an F, C to an F to a G, which is really a 1 to a 4, a 1 to a 4 to a 5 in the key of C major. But I chose very distinct voicings for my playing. For example, for the C, I chose this. So what do I have here? So I have this very open voicing for the C major, and just to see how it comes about, just started from a C major chord and then take this C, let's say up here, this C up here and this E down here, and here you have this open voicing. And I also added this cluster, which is really the 7. So you could say I'm playing a C major 7, but I prefer to think of it as simply a C major, but with this additional cluster tone. And these clusters actually play a very prominent role in getting kind of a modern sounding, thick harmonic vocabulary. So usually the clusters that tend to creep up the most are the ones that are a semitone apart, so either a B and a C, that is the root and the 7th, or say an E and an F in the key of C, which is the 3rd and 4th. For example, if I were to play, I could play like a different inversion, which would maybe be this. So this is also a C major, but the moment I add this cluster up here, it really gets this extra bit of tension that I personally find to be very nice. Now the same goes for this kind of F major chord. See, this is really just a really simple F major triad, and you can see this by taking this A down here. So really this is a very basic F major triad, but I've also added this G here. You can think of this as this F sus2, an F major triad with an add 2. But again, I prefer to think of it, just sort of in the way I approach things, as an F major chord, but with an additional kind of cluster note. Now let's look at this G chord here. So I'm playing a G in the right hand, but I'm also hitting the C here, and my bass is not a G, it's really an F. These are two interesting things to think about. So why am I adding this C here? And again, this is a cluster thing. See, if I took the C up an octave here, I would get this, again, this very nice clustering sound. But I'm just playing it down here. You could also think of this as sort of, this is really a C major 7 sus2. But honestly, I prefer to still think of this as a G, just with a cluster note. Now as for the left hand, you see I'm hitting this F bass note. Why am I doing this? Well, I want to create tension. A lot of the time what you're trying to do is really maintain a certain amount of tension in the listener's ear. And so the F is actually, can be thought of as if I'm playing a G dominant 7, because a G dominant 7 would have this F note in it. But the way I prefer to think about this is I'm anticipating the next chord, which is going to be a C. So I know that my next bass is going to be an E. So I'm really playing a note that is as close to it as possible. I could have also done like maybe a G, but I prefer this very smooth motion for my bass, which was... So I'm really still playing, I'm not moving with my bass a lot, I'm just playing E to an F, and then I'm staying on the F. This creates this tension that immediately resolves when I play the next repetition of this phrase. Now you'll notice that the next repetition really is played an octave lower, and this is kind of you thinking like an arranger, and not, I mean, whenever you play an instrument, you should always think a little bit like an arranger. For example, if you play the first part up here, maybe to add tension, you can play it an octave lower. So this really thickens up the sound and adds the additional oomph that you need to push the piece forward. One more thing that you would think of as maybe an arranger, remember when I played, I also played this little trill up there. And again, you have to think a little bit like an arranger, because what you're doing is there's like a lot of space. I'm playing, and then I'm not playing anything. So I'm filling up the space just a little bit, just like a little dash of color in a painting, with this little trill up here. It's not really a trill really when I think about it, because it would have to be like this. But still, there's no deep theoretical concept behind it. It's just sort of a composition sort of thing. Now this phrase repeats again. So there's nothing really that much interesting here. This is basically a G resolving to a C, a 5 resolving to a 1. And then the next part of the song, really, or the second part of this piece, sounds like this. There's a lot to digest here, so let's break it down really step by step. Let's start with this. Now, this is again a very simple progression in the sense that I really have an F going to a G, going to an A minor. Now, the first thing I do here is I open up these voicings. So I do this sort of thing. And this is really just an F. Just take this F up here. See, it's just an F triad in the second inversion. Now, next thing you can do is you can double the bass. Then you can play in fifths in the left hand. That sometimes helps thicken the sound. And then I do an additional trick. Again, I add these clusters here. You see, I hit two notes with my thumb. So I'm playing this F C, F G, G D, G A, A E, A B. And that in itself already sounds pretty good. And I can also double things in the right hand. So most of the harmonic brunt, you could say, or at least some of it falls on the left hand, and I can play sparsely in the right hand. For example, here when I'm playing this A minor chord, which is, you can really think of it as an A minor 9, but I prefer to think of it as an A minor 7. See, this is my 7 here with a cluster. The next part, this is an F going to a C over bass of E, going to a D minor 7. Now the trick here is these hammer-ons that, you know, guitar players do all of the time. And that can really liven up a progression. Instead of just doing, you're doing. So the idea is that pretty much you can do this hammer-on technique on any note in the chord that you're playing. I could have also done maybe stuff like that. That sounds a little bit worse. Usually when I do a hammer-on, it's for the middle note. So this is like a classic kind of keyboards version of the hammer-on. You have a triad and you're doing this sort of motion. You're hitting the note below the note you're playing and resolving to the note you want to play. Now, again, you can do this for all three chords, or you can use just maybe for the first one and the last one, and just play the middle one straight. Another interesting thing to note here is the particular voicing of the F chord. This is really, you can think of it, and I actually prefer to think of this as well, as this is an F major 9, but it's really a F major 9 sus2. These kind of sus2 major 7 or sus2 major 9 chords have a really nice kind of color to them. So I recommend that you just play around with them. Here's a C major 9 sus2. You can even do this with minor chords. I think it sounds a little bit not as well defined, I'd say. Still interesting to play around with. And again, I'm using this trick my left hand, I'm playing a double bass. Then I'm adding the fifth, and I'm also doing this cluster trick with my thumb. The next part is a repetition, but with a variation. So this is interesting. What I'm really playing here from a basic diatonic point of view is an F, E, A minor. But the particular voicing I choose has really chromatic motion of sus2 chords. So sus2 chords are really great for again, adding tension to your playing, not make it sound too simplistic. You know, if you were just to play a triad sound very boring, but sus2 chords, sometimes sus4 chords, really add an additional color, really interesting color to your playing. And again, this sort of chromatic reharmonization is something you can always try. For example, let's say you want to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. I mean, just off the top of my head, doing something like this with sus2 chords makes it sound, you know, just completely different, but of course at the same time the same. Let's try maybe a chromatic motion. Well, you know, of course, you have to experiment, and over time you'll kind of learn what sounds good and what doesn't, but really just trying these chromatic motions can often pay off big. So I recommend that you experiment with this. Now looking at the next part of the song, this is kind of the same as the motion, the F to G to A minor motion we had at the beginning, but now I'm playing this F to an E, or an E dominant 7, to an A minor 9, or you know, one of these variations, A minor 11. Now this part is also the same as the previous one, but the last chord is substituted for this. And this is voicing by stacked fifths, and I have a video talking about this. I'm kind of playing the outline of a D flat major in the left hand and an A flat major in the right hand. And these two chords are a perfect fifth apart. And the reason I chose this is, again, this is sort of anticipation, because this is going to resolve to a C major. So you see, this chord is less about the functional role of whatever you're playing. It's more about just really getting ready to resolve to this C major that's going to come in a moment. This is a C major really over a bass of E. Now, again, we're putting on our arranger hat. What we're doing here is I've gone a little bit too low, and I don't want to keep playing on this register. And I know that the finale is also coming up, so I'm gonna go up here, but maintain my very strong bass notes down here. So this really cuts through the mix. So again, in this case, keeping the strong, very deep bass notes in the left hand maintains the power of the playing, and this high register in the right hand cuts through and it sort of re-grabs the listener's attention. And you know, these register tricks are often as important as all of these fancy voicings and whatnot. They can really, really make a song or your playing shine through. It's not always about having the most complicated chord voicings and progressions. So let's look at the final part of the song. Now, what I was going for here, and this also happens in the bass that's playing in the track, is a really smooth motion in the bass in the left hand. You see, it's really going in really, really small, either semitones or tones. So it's a C, going to an F, going to a, this is a D dominant 9. This is an F over the bass of G. A minor, F major 7 sus-do, A flat major 9. This is again an F over a bass of F, sorry, over a bass of G. And a C, and I'm not really playing a C major here. I personally prefer to finish again with a little bit of harmonic ambiguity with a C sus-do. Now the way you can understand this, I'll just say a few words, is this progression is made of two parts. That's the first part, and that's the second part, and the final resolution. So for the first part, it's really just fourths. It's a C going to an F, and then transposed up, a D going to a G. And finally, the last part, I was going to play something like maybe an A minor. I mean, I could have really done this in many different ways. I could have played this. I wanted to play sort of an A minor to an F. Sorry, so A minor to an F, to a D minor, to a G, to a C. But I ended up replacing the D minor with this A flat major 9. This is kind of like a little bit like a tritone substitution, but really honestly for me it's just a chord, just like a passing chord. It's a chord that's a semitone above the target chord which I want to reach, which is the G, which I choose to play as an F in the right hand and a G bass in the left hand. So I hope you've kind of followed me through this journey going over the piece, and if there was a particular part that sort of piqued your interest, I highly recommend that you pause the video, go back to the particular point in time, pause the video and copy it. Just really honestly as simple as that, just copy my playing. It's not cheating, it's perfectly fine. Players have been doing this for, since the beginning of time. And that's really the way you learn to do stuff. So don't feel bad about it. You have my perfect, full approval. And I also hope that the sort of commentary or narration I had following the piece helped you understand kind of how my brain worked in choosing some of these voicings and, jumping around the registers and so on. And that's pretty much it. I hope you've learned something interesting, and I'll see you next time.